Welcome to the My Creative Days podcast, where we will talk about all things DIY, home decor, decorating tips, and creating a beautiful home on a budget. I am hoping our time together will spark a creative idea, help you plan your next DIY, or inspire you to finally tackle that project you keep putting off. Grab your favorite cup of motivation and let's chat. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm going to talk about mastering the art of paint application and just different ways that you can apply paint. So if you follow me over on Instagram, I have been sharing different ways to apply paint. So there are four main ways that you can apply paint, and I'm just going to go through the different options and like the pros and cons of each. And then as I'm going through these, I'll tell you, why I do like them, when I grab for these items. But there are different ways that you can apply paint, especially like if you're talking about furniture flipping, which we will kind of talk about mostly today because that's what I've been sharing over on Instagram. And that's where I've been getting most of the questions on what most of the questions are about. Especially when I bring out one of these things, I always get questions about it. So I thought this would be helpful to some people that are just starting out. Maybe you're somebody that you've painted a few pieces and you're just still trying to get in the groove and to figure out what you should be using, when you should be using it. So I thought this episode might be helpful to you. So the first one, brushes, paint brushes. I've done many podcasts about this, and one thing that I'm going to tell you, when you are picking out any of these supplies, you want to get the right ones. So what I'm going to do is in the notes for the podcast, I will leave links to my favorite tools and my favorite things that I'm talking about. With paintbrushes, please do not buy the cheapest paintbrush that you find in the stores. I'm telling you now, you will be wasting a lot of time, money, and effort because they won't stand up. You won't be able to clean them. And I'm not telling you that you need to go buy the most expensive paintbrush that you can find. I do have a couple of favorites. I like their price points. And so I will leave a link for those in the description and notes of this podcast. So brushes are something for me that is what I'm going to, the first three I'm going to grab first. The first three tools that I'm going to talk about because they're easy for me. Now, I am in a different stage of flipping furniture than I was when I first started, right? When I first started, I was trying to furnish our first home. And so I was trying to paint anything and everything. And then I started, getting better at it, learning more. And then people started asking if they could buy the pieces I was, flipping. And when I was doing a lot of projects that way, I would maybe get the sprayer out, which we will get to later. But the brush is something that I will grab 95% of the time when I am, I found a great piece that I just can't leave at the thrift store, at Restore, at a yard sale, and I just know it's got tons of potential. That's when I'm picking up pieces now. It's fun for me, and I get to use, the projects to help teach other people how to do it and how to, grow a business with it, with our academy. So now it just looks a little bit different for me, but a brush is, the pros are it's ideal for detail work, smaller areas, edges, trims, intricate designs, those kinds of things. To go along with this, a lot of people will reach out to me and say, I get brush strokes. So I'm going to leave myself a little note here. The all-in-one paint that I use, which is amazing for beginners or people that have been doing it forever, it is self-leveling. So you don't, it's going to self-level as you are painting and as it dries. Another thing, if you're not using a self-leveling paint, you can use a fine mist spray bottle, and that will help with brush strokes as well. You kind of have control over the application. Not kind of, you do, right? So if you have like carved details, furniture legs, things like that, a brush, you have a lot more control with it. And you don't need any extra equipment, right? It's a brush and go. And that's why it is my main, what I grab mostly. Especially in the winter, I work in my office. And so if I have a little dresser or something that I'm working on, I'll do it right here in my office. And I have a little drawer with all my brushes. And So like I said, it's just easy for me. I just grab a brush, open the can of paint, and I'm ready to go. So some of the cons that come with brushes, it can leave brush strokes, especially if you're using thicker paints, or you're doing like large surface areas, right? Then that can happen. But I'm telling you, from beginner to a seasoned pro, my favorite all-in-one paint from Dixie Belle Paint. You will love this paint. I'm telling you, you need to get your hands on it. It's just get a can of your favorite color. It's unbelievable. Okay. It can be time consuming for large projects like dressers or like dining room tables. So where as a sprayer, you can just kind of spray and go and it's a little bit quicker. And then, cleaning your brushes and making sure all the bristles are cleaned and cleared away. That can be something else that could be a con for some people. The next one are rollers. So this is another thing that I will grab if I'm doing, a dresser or a small piece. I do have some favorite rollers that I would put in the description or in the show notes for you. A roller. So some of the pros with a roller are covers a large area quickly. So it'll save you some time, creates a smoother, even coat, especially if you're a beginner, just learning how to use a brush and the paints on a piece of furniture, especially on flat surfaces like tabletops or like cabinet doors. And it works well with most paints, primers, and it reduces the time you spend on large furniture pieces, especially for a newbie. So I do get a lot of questions about rollers and which rollers to use and what's best for a beginner or that. So there are different rollers for different projects. If you're going to paint kitchen cabinets or you're going to paint a dresser, there are definitely different rollers, and I will put my favorite in the show notes. So cons of using rollers. So Matt will always prefer to grab a roller. He is like when we have a flip house project, like the one we're working on right now, he would rather roll all day long where I'm using a paintbrush to do the trim work and things like that. So if he was going to help me with a dresser, he likes to use a roller. But some of the cons, it's not suitable for detailed or intricate areas, obviously. You're not using a roller to go around spindles or like carved areas, right? You'll need a brush for those or a sprayer. It can create a textured finish depending on the roller's nap. So this is where you need to be careful what kind of nap you're getting on your rollers for the project that you're doing. And another thing, and this is one that me and Matt talk about all the time because he doesn't understand it and doesn't see it. Paint splatter is more common, right? So you need to prep your workspace well. So, when Matt uses it, let's just say we're doing, like a living room ceiling or the, living room walls or whatever. It may be so small, but then when you're somebody like me who's actually down on my hands and knees doing the trim work around the floor, I can actually see all of the paint splatter, right? Whereas if you have a roller, even if you're doing a tall dresser and you're up at the top, you may not see the paint splatter that's all over the floor that's around you. So just make sure that you prep your workspace well, because guaranteed there will be some kind of paint splatter with a roller. So this third one, sponges and sponge applicators. I have my favorite blue sponges that I will sometimes use to apply paint. They're my favorite thing to apply a top coat because you're not going to get the brush strokes and it's easy to maneuver and work around, but you can definitely use them for paint. And so I've been kind of sharing, like I said, different ways to apply paint on different projects. And this is one that I get a lot of questions for. So the pros of using a sponge applicator, they are great for decorative finishes, to add like faux effects such as blending colors on furniture if you're into doing that. They are great for uneven or textured surfaces like ornate cabinet doors or vintage furniture. And they're easy to use and relatively inexpensive. They're $1.50. I will leave the link in the show notes for those. The cons, so they're not practical for large areas of furniture. Like if you have a huge tabletop or, a big wardrobe, you're not going to really want to use the sponge applicator. It does take some practice, right, to achieve consistent results. So, especially when you're doing more, like blending techniques and different paint techniques, some faux techniques, like all of those, just like with anything though, practice makes progress. That's what I like. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And then sometimes, depending on your sponges, they may absorb more paint than other tools. So leading to, more waste. If you're not dousing your sponge with it, that may not be an issue. So they are my favorite way, though, to apply a top coat if you're doing it by hand. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Get a $1.50 sponge and try it. I think you'll really like it. So the last one here are paint sprayers, right? So a lot of people use paint sprayers, and we have a few different paint sprayers. We used to use them a lot more when I was doing a lot more furniture pieces, when I was selling them, weekly, and I had a bunch of pieces to get done, and I was using a sprayer a lot more. So the pros with a sprayer, it offers a flawless factory-like finish with no brush strokes, right? Perfect for furniture makeovers. It's super fast, especially for large furniture pieces, or you've got like chairs, anything with spindles. Chairs are the worst to paint by hand. So if you have a lot of furniture pieces that have a lot of spindles and things like that, I would definitely say use a sprayer. It can handle corners, crevices, and ornate details effortlessly, right? Just super easy. Now, the cons are it requires more prep work to mask off areas, to prevent overspray. So like for me, when I'm doing, I find a piece that I just can't resist, I can just grab a paintbrush and get going. Whereas this takes a lot more prep work, right? It's not just an easy setup, get it done, and then get your first coat on, walk away, go do some work, change over the laundry like I'm doing with the brush, and then come back to it. It's not that way. Cleanup is time consuming because you really, really, really want to make sure that you're cleaning out that sprayer right, because you want it to work the next time you go and grab it. And sprayers can be expensive. The high quality models, which I would tell you to, like I said, do not skimp on a sprayer. So it may not be worth the investment if you're just doing small projects right now. And it's not ideal for indoor use unless it's well ventilated and like you've got a spray booth or you've got an area where, you're not worried about where you're spraying and what's and the ventilation. So when it comes to furniture makeovers, choosing the right tool is super important. And choosing it for what you're doing or maybe where you are in your journey, or think about how many pieces you're actually doing, what kind of pieces you're doing to make the choice on what you need to do. I'm going to leave a link in the show notes for all of the things that I love for these. And for like a thing like a paint sprayer, it's really going to depend on where you're at in your journey. Like, I just think you need to do a lot of research, what each one offers, what the price point is, and just really be honest with where you are in your journey and where you are with maybe getting a sprayer or not getting a sprayer. But for the other things, for sure, I can lead you in the right direction and tell you which kind of rollers are great, the brushes, and then definitely the sponges. So you cannot go wrong with those, and those aren't as expensive or as a big investment. So if you thought this was helpful, please share this podcast with somebody you think might find it helpful. If you have any questions, reach out to me on Instagram at mycreativedays or through email, lindsay@mycreativedays.com. And until next time, I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you very soon. Hello, friends. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I'm grateful that you tune in every week and that you share the show with your family and friends. I love having creative chit chats with you, and my hope is that this podcast will inspire you to try a new project, start a DIY that you've been putting off, and decorate your home exactly how you want it. There are a few ways you can help us with the podcast. Follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you could take a few minutes to leave the podcast a review, that would help us so much. Again, thank you for being here, and I look forward to our chat next week. Bye-bye.